They did luck out with a series that turned out to be a little bit easy for them. And I think that allowed them to gel a little bit more as a unit. So now we get past the regular season. We get past the fact that, well, maybe they weren't the highest of seeds, in the Eastern Conference. They maybe didn't even get the seed that they really would have set out to get at the beginning of the year, which I would hope would be the 1 seed. But either way, then they get matched up with the Pacers. They do quite well, I would say. And they looked good, too. So now does that give them the momentum and the confidence to go in to Milwaukee and give them a tough series? I think ultimately Milwaukee wins this series, but I do think this series goes 6 games. I think we see a good Eastern Conference semifinals here, not only in this series, but in the next series that you're going to talk about as well. So I couldn't be more excited about these Eastern Conference series here coming up. And with how many years we've had LeBron in the East and now he's not a factor, I'm pretty excited about the fact that the Eastern Conference semifinals and then the Eastern Conference finals are sure to be good, long series where we see a lot of basketball. We see a lot of back and forth. I'm still going to say that Milwaukee and the Sixers go on, but I don't know that that's a guarantee.
I think what the Celtics did, I think for both the Bucks and the Celtics, it's hard to look at what they did in round one because they were both playing wounded teams. The Bucks got the Pistons with Blake on one leg and then no Oladipo for the Pacers, so they didn't have that guy that could create shots like basically Kyrie can for the Celtics. So I think it's hard to judge those sweeps on the opponents just because those opponents weren't at full strength. But what the Celtics did was exactly what we talked about 5-6 weeks ago with this team. They were playing too many guys, too many minutes. Look, in the regular season, that's probably not a bad thing. But what was happening was nobody had any type of a rhythm. The minutes were all over the place. Hayward wasn't playing very well, but they were still trying to get him minutes because he's making $30+ million a year. And you'd like to get him back in shape and get his confidence up before the playoffs. And they actually, it's worked itself out because now with Smart's injury, they've got an 8-man rotation, and their stars are playing 35+ minutes a game. Tatum, Horford, Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, Morris, Hayward. Those guys are all getting the bulk of the minutes. And then you're throwing Rozier in for 18 to 20 minutes a game. It's not this thing where, okay, Brown's going to get 23 minutes tonight and Tatum's going to get 28, and we don't know if Kyrie. This team always played better when 1 or 2 guys were out because the guys that got the minutes, they played with more confidence. They played with more of a rhythm. So I think this is going to be what looked like it was not going to be a very good series. I think it's going to be a very competitive series now. You've already got the juice from last year with Bledsoe and Rozier. You had the Bucks taking 2 of the 3 games from them this year. I don't think the Celtics, like everybody else, they don't have an answer for Giannis. And I don't really see the Bucks have that much of an answer for Kyrie and maybe even Tatum in this series. So I think it's going to be a lot of, can the Celtics slow down Middleton? They struggled with him last year in this series. And it's just, can Giannis elevate his game? Can he continue to do that? That's what it's going to take for the Bucks to win. Giannis is going to have to be a guy that's getting, I think he's going to have to average close to 35 points a night in this series.
I think he will.
Because I think the Celtics, I think he can, but I think they're going to need every bit of him because he's so efficient from the floor, shooting 55, 60%. They're going to just need him to do that and really dominate these games. Because I look at this like, I agree with you. I think it's going to be 6. I even think it could be a 7-game series where home court's going to matter a lot in this series. Again, you're going to have ups and downs with shooting the basketball, but Giannis can sort of take that away because he can stop runs, because if you get it inside, when he gets in the paint, Eric, he's almost unstoppable. So I'm like you, I'm leaning towards the Bucks just because I think Giannis is the tougher guy to cover in this series, but I think it's going to be a whale of a series. And the other one, Philly-Toronto, Eric, I think this is going to be a great series as well because it feels like after game 1, Philly started figuring things out and they started to play with a playoff type mentality. When Embiid was out, this team looked great. And it almost, we had talked over text, it's like this team sort of figured out what they have to do to win basketball games. You've got to get guys like Tobias Harris. He needs to have 15+ shots a game. And you've got to get shots. Your big 4 have to get the bulk of your shots. You've got to play those guys the minutes, and they need to be getting the shots. And even a guy like Redick getting 17, 18 shots, it's probably too much even when Embiid's in there. But it seems like they finally figured that out. Like, hey, you know what? If we play with pace and we can get 85 to 90 shots a game, we have enough shots to spread around and keep everybody involved, and we just play better basketball. And it seems like they've kind of started to figure something out. So do you feel that way? And that now you have more confidence in this team, or am I just reading too much into what I saw in the first round?
No, I think you're right. I think you have some of the pieces that they put in place as they made those trades and made those deals playing good basketball. When Jimmy Butler and Harris play good basketball, you feel like you've gotten value out of those trades. You feel like you've gotten what you expected to get. Then when you get production out of Simmons, I mean, he looked awful in game one, but then he looked pretty good the rest of the series. The one thing that surprised me, and I think the difference maker in that first round, is when it seemed like there was a big question mark whether Embiid would play. And then he goes on through the series and he's putting up 25 points a game, 22 points a game. He's very productive. So I'm not really sure what's going on with Embiid's injury, how serious it is. But I think for me, when you get solid performances by Joel Embiid, who I love Simmons when he plays well, and I get frustrated when he plays like he looks like he's a guy that just walked off of Walmart's stock floor. I don't know. But when you have Joel Embiid playing the way that he can play, he is the foundation of that offense. He's the foundation of that team. And then if you add good performances from Simmons, Butler, and Harris, they're a tough team to beat. And I think they have the roster. Do they have the maturity? We've talked about that, to go in and contend in these series that are going to be tough. I mean, the Raptors are going to give them a tough series. I think Philly can win this series.
Yeah.
I don't know if they will, but I'm going to put my eggs in that basket because I'm a Sixers fan, obviously, so I'm going to be a homer for them, and I'm going to root for them as hard as I possibly can. But I think they can beat the Raptors. So I'm going to hope that that's the case. I do see another long series, though. I don't think this is going to be easy for either one of these teams. And so if you have Lowry and Kawhi playing well, if you have Embiid and Simmons and Butler playing well, this is going to be a slobber knocker of a series, maybe even more so than the other one, because I don't see a clear-cut favorite in this series. If you tell me in a week and a half that the Raptors won 4-2, I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, I could have seen that coming. If you tell me in a week and a half that the Sixers won 4-2, I'll be like, well, first of all, I'll be like, yes, that's awesome. But then I'll be like, okay, yeah, I could have seen that happening. So I don't know. This is a coin flip for me, but I do think the Sixers can pull this one off.
Do you think with all the moves that they've made this year and the assets that they've sort of burnt through from the Philly side, if they don't win this series, that this year was a bust?
Yes, I do. And I'm not saying they need to win the NBA Finals for that to not be a bust.
I'm just talking about this series. At least get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yes. Oh, yeah. This series, yes, absolutely. With LeBron out of the East, the Cavaliers are not a factor. You know that the Bucks and the Raptors are your top two teams. But if the Sixers can get into this series deep, or even better, if they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals and then make that a series, I think that's a success. The only thing that worries me is all of this talk. I mean, the talk is everywhere that Jimmy Butler won't be there next year. And so I think that plays a similar role to what you had pointed out about the Warriors with Kevin Durant. I just don't know if the going gets tough for the Sixers as they move through these playoffs, and it looks like Butler has one foot out the back door. Does that break them down? Does that make it so that it all starts to crack and fall apart? To me, this team has a great chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe get to the NBA Finals. But if there's any dissension at all, it's over for them because they don't then have the maturity to handle teams like the Raptors, the Celtics, and the Bucks. It just won't happen.
I'm not as worried about that with Butler because I don't think the talk is near as predominant as what it is for Durant. And Butler seems like an all basketball type guy. Like he doesn't have other shows on ESPN and he's not doing all these different things. Like he seems to be like all about basketball. So he feels like he's pretty locked in. But Eric, I agree. If they don't win this series, the season's a bust. And I think they absolutely should win this series. All right, just take the big four from both of these teams. If you were drafting these guys, would you go Kawhi or Embiid first pick?
Oh, gosh.
The point is you don't even have to. It's very close.
Yes.
So even if you take Kawhi first, I think it would be Embiid, Simmons, probably Harris, and then Butler before you would go some form of Siakam, Lowry, Gasol. What I'm saying is I think the best four guys in this series are on Philly's team outside of Kawhi. I think they have an advantage there. And when you're playing these guys 38 to 40, 42 minutes a game, Philly, their big four has to beat Toronto's big four because the bench is going to matter.
Yeah.
Not in the playoffs. I know Van Fleet coming off the bench is big for them, but it's not like in the regular season where that second unit is getting 25 minutes a game. The starters are getting a lot of minutes put on them. I think that's where it comes down to for me. If Philly's big four can't find a way to get it done, then this absolutely is a bust. And there is nobody on Toronto that can stop Embiid. we saw that the blueprint even in game 4 when Embiid came back, and he just dominated. He dominated in that fourth quarter, even on basically a sore knee, put up 30-plus points, 16 rebounds, was dominant on the defensive side, rim protecting. So that's this Philly team. They've got to work things through Embiid. Simmons has to continue to be aggressive. When those guys lean back, just attack them. When they're on their heels, attack. If they're going to give space, continue to move this offense and play with pace. Don't let the game get slowed down. When Philly plays fast, Eric, they are really, really good. When they play more half-court style, they're not quite as good, but they looked a lot better. They ran a lot more. Their sets looked a lot better. And even when Embiid was out and they got that win, they just looked like a better team than they did in game 1. So I think they are starting to figure stuff out. But yeah, I'm going to go with Philly in this game. And if they don't win, it's definitely a bust of a year for me.
So as we close out this NBA segment, we're recording here late on a Thursday night after the NFL draft. We know that Friday night will bring us the Warriors and the Clippers. I feel that the Warriors will win that game. So then let's go to Saturday, because that's when we do see the Toronto Raptors and Philadelphia 76ers kick off. But Justin, not to kick it back to the West, but we do have to make note that the biggest series in the West is this one that's tied 3-3 with the Spurs and the Nuggets. So just real quick, who do you think comes out of that series? Because we felt like the top seeds were going to all advance except for maybe the Nuggets. They looked like they might have an opportunity up 3-2, but then the Spurs come back and look really good. So now it's 3-3. Ultimately, come Saturday night, who wins that series?
Boy, we called this one, didn't we? We saw this right off the bat with the way that the Spurs came into game 1 and got a win. So both these teams have wins on the other one's home floor. This series has just been every other game, back and forth. So I'm going to go with Denver in this series. I just think that they're going to find a way to get it done at home and just kind of playing out the way that the series has gone, just the ebbs and flows where it's just been win-loss, win-loss, win-loss is kind of how they've gone back and forth here. And it just feels like that Denver crowd is going to be out of its mind. This will be the 7th game. Denver has every advantage playing in the mile-high air. The Spurs are an older team. This is a game that they absolutely should win. If they don't, again, you talk about a bust of a year. For Denver, finally getting to the playoffs, getting the 2 seed, and to get knocked off by a 7, that would be disastrous for this team. So I'm going to go with Denver. I'm going to ride them in this series. And frankly, Eric, I'm just sick of Popovich. I'm sick of his press conference. He's as bad as Westbrook. You can't ask him a question. He's got to be prickly all the time. And everybody just thinks it's so great and so wonderful. I just am tired of him. I'm ready to see something different. I'd much rather see a Nuggets-Blazers round 2 matchup. So I'm going to be behind Denver Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm actually agreeing with you on that one, too. I'd much rather see Denver. I'd much rather be wrong. I said the Spurs would win this series. I'd much rather be wrong. I'd rather see all of the top seeds go on to the next round, because I think the second round of the NBA playoffs this year is probably the best that we've seen in a very, very long time. I am genuinely intrigued by all of the series. Now, I'm saying that assuming that the Warriors get to the next round, because I really believe that they will.
I don't know. Clippers Rockets would be pretty interesting with the whole Chris Paul and Doc Rivers.
Oh, my goodness.
I wouldn't mind seeing that for 7 games. Lou Williams.
You make a good point.
That might actually be more intriguing.
So maybe we win either way if that happens. But again, to your point, I think the second round of the NBA playoffs is going to be a really high-flying, a lot of action, a lot of storylines. I'm excited to talk about all of these series in the weeks ahead. Speaking of talking about, we're now at the 44th episode of Season 2, and I think we've come a long way in this podcast. We actually have a host right now who's telling us, hey guys, you have over 500 hours of recorded audio on our server. You might have to make some decisions to archive a lot of your past episodes. So I did want to give a note to the listeners that because we are a sports podcast, once the episodes get to be too old, they're really not even relevant anymore. And hopefully you've also seen some quality changes and some differences in the way that we have the show over where we started. And so it's going to be coming up soon that we're going to archive all of Season 1's episodes. They may not even be available for download, depending on how our host handles that. I don't really think you're losing anything because, yeah, you could go back and maybe listen to what we said, a hot take, 2 years ago on something, but I'm not sure really we're getting a lot of listens to those past episodes because I don't know why you would want to know what we thought about the 2017 NBA playoffs. Either way, those episodes may go away, so just don't be alarmed by that if you see that. We will keep season 2 and beyond at this point, but we're coming up on season 3. We're working on a new intro and outro. We've got some things happening behind the scenes that we're excited about. We're not going anywhere. The downloads, the subscriptions, the listens, they keep on the rise, and we appreciate that. Obviously, we've had a long episode here with the NFL draft, getting into the second round of the NBA playoffs, but a lot of hot topics we needed to talk about. Thank you for listening. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk back at you next time.